Hello, welcome back. We are going to be talking today about functional groups and monomers and polymers, dehydration synthesis reactions, and hydrolysis reactions. All right, so let me share my screen, my iPad. And again, it's going to take a hot second. But there we go. All right. So, and again, all PowerPoints will be posted, and there's usually questions at the end of those. So you should check those out. Sometimes they appear on tests. So biological molecules, these are going to be chapters 3 through 5, but this video is really going to focus on the first part of those. So just a really quick review. What is the charge of a carbon atom? And again, that should be neutral because all atoms are electrically neutral, meaning they have no charge because the protons and the electrons are equal numbers. The atomic number is 6. That equals the number of protons and the number of electrons. The atomic weight, here, we're gonna round to 12. How many protons? We have 12. Neutrons, I'm gonna skip to that. Electrons, protons, 6. Electrons, 6, they're equal. Neutrons, we're going to do 12 minus 6 is 6. Draw the atomic structure. And again, I want you to be drawing in the way I draw them. 6p, 6n. Here's our nucleus. And then we have 1, 2 on the inner shell. And we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4 on the outer shell for a total of 6 electrons. That again gives carbon 1, 2, 3, 4 chances for covalent bonds. So they can form 4 covalent bonds, and that allows carbon to make lots of cool shapes. Double bonds, triple bonds, single bonds, chains, rings, etc. So why is carbon so damn important for biological molecules? Hopefully my face moves when I do that. So first off, sorry, when I import to the iPad, sometimes my images get a little funky, and I apologize for that. But you always have access to the PowerPoint, which has everything nice and more beautiful. So organic refers to anything, any molecule with carbon skeleton, and by that I mean carbons bound to each other, bound to hydrogen atoms, right? So here we would have H there and H there, something like that. So that's organic. Inorganic molecules are anything without carbon and carbon dioxide, right? So these are all organic, lots of carbons. Notice also lots of hydrogens bound to them. The inorganic molecules here are carbon dioxide because there's no hydrogen, and anything else without carbon. Right? So carbon is really, really versatile, which makes it really important. It has these 4 electrons in its valence or outer shell. Therefore, it can form 4 covalent bonds. And it can make lots of complex shapes, braided chains, rings, sheets, helices, etc. Life truly depends on carbon. Remember that carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen are in all living things, right? That's primarily what all living things are made of. But for carbons, oops, sorry, hopefully you didn't see that, my little whatever. Anyway, my email popped up. So carbon skeleton are a chain of carbon atoms, like I drew on the previous slide. They can vary in length. They can be branched or unbranched. Meaning, so this one up here, if these all have H's, that's kind of unbranched. A branched one would be something like that, right? They can contain double bonds or not, right? So for example, you might have a chain that looks like this. So this is a double bond. And when I'm drawing these bonds between the carbon, what kind of bonds are those? Remember, those are covalent bonds, but more specifically, polar or nonpolar, those are nonpolar covalent bonds. They can be formed in, you can form rings. We're going to see that with one of our most popular, I don't know if that's the right word. Anyway, most popular molecule is called glucose. It forms a ring. And really importantly, hydrocarbons are compounds composed only of carbon and hydrogen, right? So which to the right here are hydrocarbons. So here, only hydrogen, carbon, only hydrogen, carbon. So all of them are hydrocarbons. And in general, hydrocarbons, polar or nonpolar, those should be nonpolar, because remember, that is nonpolar and that is nonpolar. All right, so functional groups. So functional groups they really determine the chemical reactivity of molecules. They are they're the most likely to participate in chemical reactions. And very often organic molecules have one or more functional groups, right? You are responsible for knowing these 7 functional groups, all right? Hydroxyl, methyl, carbonyl. Some people say carbonyl, but I just can't. Carboxyl, amino, phosphate, and sulfhydryl. These are going to come up over and over and over in the course of this semester or in this year. So it's really important that you know them. And in fact, there is a homework assignment based on them, where you are responsible for completing the posted functional groups chart. I gave you a blank one so that you can fill it in. You are responsible for recognizing each of these functional groups, explaining if they're polar, nonpolar, charged, acidic, or basic, but I will not ask you to draw these, all right? So let's just look at a few. So hydroxyl up here, we have an OH. An OH by definition, whatever, has a polar covalent bond in them. So they're polar, meaning the oxygen is slightly partial negative, the hydrogen partial positive, making it polar. Methyl, we only have CH groups, CH bonds, so those are all non-polar. Carbonyl, polar because we have this oxygen, that's going to be partial negative. Carboxyl, again, we now have 2 regions that have polar areas. So those are, this is going to be polar, but also this is charged, right? Because this H can go on or off. So it is charged and acidic. Amino is going to be charged because this can also accept an H, giving it a positive charge. So it's charged and basic. The phosphate group, we're gonna have, this is charged as well. And this is also acidic because these H's can come on and off. And then we have the sulfhydryl, which is polar. This is gonna be really important in proteins, which we're gonna see a lot. So the ones in sulfhydryl, amino, and carboxyl are all gonna be really important in proteins as we move forward. So, ooh, weird. So we have cholesterol. So here's an example of a big old molecule, and this is a very typical kind of quiz question, for example. So what parts of this are polar and nonpolar, right? So you should recognize automatically that these are all CH bonds or CC bonds. So those are all going to be nonpolar. Every time we have a ring like this, what that means is that you have C's bound to each other and there's some H's coming off. So again, all of this is going to be nonpolar as well, because again, you only have CC or CH bonds. So those are nonpolar covalent bonds. However, here you have a little hydroxyl functional group, and that is going to be polar, right? So what that means is that this cholesterol molecule is actually what we call amphipathic, right? Amphipathic. It's a molecule that contains both polar and nonpolar parts, right? And I've just labeled those parts here for you. These are the nonpolar regions, and the red is in polar. All right, so how are organic molecules made, or how are they synthesized? So it turns out that biological molecules are made from smaller components. These small organic molecules are called monomers. Monomers come together to form polymers, right? And they do that in a very specific way. Sorry. So biological polymers are formed by the removal of water, right? And this is a very important reaction called a dehydration synthesis reaction that joins monomers. Remember, it has synthesis in it, so that is going to be the building up of a polymer, right? The building up. So what happens in a dehydration synthesis is that we're going to see the loss or the removal of a water molecule. So for example, here we have monomer number 1 and we have monomer number 2. These are going to come together, and what you'll see when they come together, if you have an H and an OH, those guys can react. They will form water, and what you'll be left with are covalent bond, is a covalent bond. Notice that when we remove the water, we still have an oxygen here, and that's why there's the remaining oxygen here in the covalent bond. Biological molecules can also be broken down from polymer to monomer. So here we have one polymer, and we are breaking it down into their 1 and their 2 monomers. And the way that this works, we also use water, and this is called a hydrolysis reaction. And if you think of the word hydrolysis, it really is hydrolysis, water cutting, right? Water is attacking here. So in the polymer, you are adding water. And what that does is that if there's this oxygen here, then the water can join, and now you're left with 2 monomers, each with a hydroxyl functional group, right? So we have dehydration synthesis, building up of polymers, and hydrolysis, breaking down polymers into their monomers. All right, whoops, so sorry. It's a little frantic. Still getting used to doing all these online, so bear with me. So when we're going to talk about our biological molecules, so why do we care about this? These are super important for all of life, all right? So all biological molecules have carbon in them. We've talked about the importance of carbon, why it's special, has lots of binding potential with those 4 carbon bonds. Carbon-containing biological molecules are essential for life, and we have 4 groups, 4 kinds of biological molecules. We have the carbohydrates, which are the sugars. We have lipids, which are the fats and the oils. We have the nucleic acids, which are going to make the DNA and the RNA. And then we have proteins, which do everything, all right? For each of these here are the polymers, right? They are made from the building blocks, which are the monomers, right? So the monomers for polymers are sugars or glucose, right? Then we have fatty acids, which are going to make the lipids, amino acids, which are going to make the proteins, and nucleotides, which are going to come together through to make nucleic acids. Remember, when you're going in this direction, you're making dehydration synthesis reactions. When you're breaking down polymers going in this direction, you are going to go through hydrolysis or hydrolysis reactions. All right, and that's it.